Hi, my name is Noshad. Some guys know me as Shogun, and unfortunately you can't see me, but sadly for those of you who hate YouTubes, you'll be able to hear me. But thankfully you'll be able to hear my good buddy Dom, who'll give his incredible insight, to YouTubes. And thank you again, Dom, for giving up your time. I really appreciate it.
Hello, Shubes, and my pleasure as always.
Sorry, we had a bit of a recording problem there, so this may. So for me and Dom, this won't be new, but we'll have to read this again. We go from playing the bottom team last week and to basically playing the champions-elect last week. It's tomorrow, and I'll tell you this now. Although as disappointed as I was to be getting a draw against QPR, I will be so grateful if we got a draw against United. I'll take that now, because United, honestly, it's. The best way I can describe this, and I'm going to use an MMA reference, which I know the guys on Spurs Forum, they love me. They love me, and they love Dom, and they love the fact that I reference MMA. They love me.
There's almost too much stuff for me on the Spurs Forum. I sometimes can't handle it.
They're just an outpouring of love, especially from the Paxton Road end. Basically, one of the things that I think that why United and us, why we tend to lose to United, I think United and us have a very similar style of playing football. The difference is they're a little bit better than us, apart from a goalkeeper, as Dom quietly rightly pointed out. That goalkeeper, I think we got the edge, and I think defensively, for the first time in a long time, I think we may just be able to even have slightly have the edge. But I think they are far more clinical than we are, and they're passing. And in fact, they got Van Persie, he's probably the best striker in the Premier League right now. I will take a draw, but what do you think, Dom? What are your feelings?
I would happily take a draw, of course, as well against looked like the champions-elect. I mean, I actually thought they had one of their more average squads, but I think, as you've mentioned, Van Persie makes a massive difference to them. He is so clinical, it's untrue. I think without him last season, Arsenal would have struggled to finish in the top four, and he's actually made a significant difference to United as well. Agreed, the QPR result was very disappointing. I actually did expect us to get the 3 points, despite having our old manager in charge, but he set them up perfectly. It was a dull game, it was a boring game, but...
Hello, Dom. I think we might have lost Dom.
As I think I mentioned before, the biggest loss I think we have is have we gone?
No, we're back on live. We're back on live yet.
I think one of the biggest misses that we're going to have, or the biggest blow, is not just potentially dropping 2 points against QPR, but is the loss of Sandro. So I think him and Dembele are perhaps one of the best, if not potentially the best central midfield partnerships in the Premiership. So I think he's a big loss for us. But yeah, I agree with you. I would happily take a draw right now.
I think one of the reasons I'm a bit worried is that the game last season, we were hanging on for dear life. I think it was one of those games that I think the first half we clearly won, but the second half they were absolutely looking to batter us down. And honestly, it was like they kept huffing and puffing, and Red Nose, given half a chance, would have blown our house down. And if Chris Foy had obliged him, with a couple of extra minutes, he probably would have. They probably would have blown the house down, but. Luckily for us, they didn't. But I think when you look at their bench, and they can bring on Welbeck, they can bring on Chikorita, I can't pronounce his name properly. The midfielders, the quality midfielders they can bring on. Having lost Sandro, you'd have thought, well, do you know what? If Sandro had been fit, he probably would have started. But if we were starting to tie, then we could have brought on Parker. Because, and as you quite rightly said, people forget that Parker's our player of the season. That's how well Sandro's come along. People think, oh my God, we've lost Sandro. I'm like, Parker was a player of the season just about a year ago, and people seem to forget that.
Well, I think that is that's a testament to how great Sandro is for us this season. That we haven't actually missed Parker, and people are moaning that we've only got our player of the season to replace him. However, I think it is great that we do have Parker back now. He will be able to slot in. I think the one thing that we have to do against United, they have a midfield. Carrick's having a great season, from what I can see. They've still got the likes of Scholes. If we give them time and space on the ball, they will pass any team to death. So I think we've got to run at them. We've got to use our pace, our energy, our athleticism to run at them, hopefully from deep, put them under pressure. And and you never know. We've already beaten them once this season, which we never thought was ever going to happen again. Miracles potentially do happen, and
can lightning strike twice in the same season?
Do the double over.
Yeah, lightning. I think one of the advantages we've got is that although we won't have any, on our subs bench, we've got a decent subs bench, but really, if you compare our subs bench with United, and there is a big difference in just terms of quality. But I think having the fact that we haven't played midweek, we're a little bit more fresher. I'm hoping that I think it'll be a very even, very tight game. I think because in terms of how they set up, I think Ashley Young's injured. If memory serves, I think Ashley Young is injured.
He is, yeah. He is, yeah.
And I think he's injured, and so it depends. They can probably play Valencia on the right flank to try and him and Raphael to try and stop Bale. But I think on the left-hand side, if they do play Nani, which I doubt, because Nani's not really that defensive, but he always seems to play well against us. But I think if they play Kagawa, I think the Japanese lad, I think Kagawa tends to slip inside a little bit, and I think that's where we have to hit them through Lennon. I think to use another reference that I'm sure the Spurs forum fans will love as well. I don't know if you watched American football ever. Did you ever used to watch American football back in the day?
Occasionally. I'll be honest, it's never really grabbed my attention. I'm a rugby man as well, and it's all right, but can't say I'm a big fan.
There was a player called Jerry Rice, played for the 49ers, and he was basically the Robin van Persie of American football. He would just constantly be scoring, and so basically teams would double mark him because he was the player they had to stop. But on the other flank, they had another player called John Taylor, and what people would tend to do, because they'd be doubling up on one player, they'd overlook John Taylor. And I think what we need to do is basically hope that they double up on Bale and look to run everything through Aaron Lennon, because Kagawa, I'm sure he'll put his foot in, but he'll tend to step inside. And I think Evra, if we can get Lennon to target him, get him on the one-on-ones, keep pushing at him. Because I don't know how. Because I think United last season, last time we played them, they weren't set up correctly, and I think if he doesn't play Nani, he's not going to play a natural left winger. He's going to play someone who'll want to cut inside. And I think if we can target Evra, Lennon and Walker basically just battering the crap out of Evra, then hopefully we can try and kind of pin them in. What do you think?
I agree, but I don't think it's just the Man United game. I think people underrate the influence that Bale has. People have been scared to death by his pace now for a couple of seasons. And, a lot of teams, and that can include United, double up on him, and that does allow other players a bit more space and a bit more freedom. Some of those runs that Bale does off the ball, and he takes players to him when he's got the ball as well, it does free up space. And I agree, Lennon, I'm a fan of Lennon's as well. He can use that pace and get at them. And I think their defence is suspect. Yes, they have Vidic back now in the centre, but Ferdinand's kind of creaking. He's going, he's still a great player, but he's not the player of old. And I think if you can have Lennon, even cutting in and going at some of the centre backs, you never know, chances can present themselves.
And I think we've noticed that the last time I've only seen Vidic ever destroyed once, and that was by Fernando Torres many moons ago. But I just think you're not going to be able to. I've never seen, like, say, Vidic being destroyed by like a big, powerful centre half. It's always been a big, powerful centre forward. Sorry, it's always been by a very quick, pacey, kind of like a box striker, playing on the shoulder kind of thing.
Occasionally had a bit of joy against Vidic.
Shall I say that again? Sorry, Don?
Didier Drogba, I think, occasionally did pretty well against Vidic.
I don't remember that. Again, I'm really struggling to remember that, because the only time I ever remember him being really absolutely just killed was by Torres, and it's only happened the one time. But I just think because I've been trying to play crosses in, putting crosses into the box, there
is no point in, especially if we're going to play Bo on his own up front. Vidic and Ferdinand will batter those away, 99.9 times out of 100 most likely. So I agree, we have to be running at them, we have to be cutting in. If we're crossing it in, I think it has to be low and hard. If we're lofting any balls in high, and we've got Defoe up front on his own there, I think we're asking for trouble.
Yeah, and speaking of how you set it up, would you? I mean, Dawson's had a very couple of last good games, but I am because of the pace of Van Persie. I would be not. I'll be a bit worried to start with Dawson. Because I would rather have say someone like Corker, who's may not have the experience, but he's got not. I'd say the speed, so that's close to Van Persie, and Vertonghen, who's got the reading. He can read the game very, very well. I think. How would you? I mean, I don't know. I think Dawson's an amazing player. I do like Dawson quite a lot. I think he's got a great heart, and I think he leads the team. But I just think, pace-wise, I'll be very scared to have Dawson against Van Persie. What are your feelings on that?
Do you know what? I know what you're saying regarding Corker. I would actually rather have Dawson with Vertonghen. I think this match against Manchester United, the class that they have. And class of Van Persie, rather have a bit more experience. Yes, Dawson's prone to the clanger, and he's accused of doing many things like hoofing the ball up and being a bit slow on the turn sometimes. But I would actually prefer him, the likes of Vertonghen, who seems pretty pacey himself. With some of those surging runs he's been showing us as a left back. So for me, that would be my preferred centre-back pairing.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, I saw some of the Liverpool game last week, and one of the things as you said, if we give Carrick and Cleverley time and space, they'll kill us. I think when I saw that Liverpool game, I think it was more a case of Liverpool not playing that well, because I think it was a great goal by Van Persie, but their marking for that free kick that Evra scored from wasn't that great. And I just looked at that game and I thought Liverpool could have actually sneaked a win. No, not sneaked to got a win, but I think they could have definitely got a draw out of that game if they'd been a bit more, they'd been a bit tighter and shut Carrick down a bit earlier and played a, just how all a bit better organised. What are your feelings?
Well, it's possible, but people talk about Liverpool like they are contenders and they're the Liverpool of old. They are a pale imitation of that. Even the once great Steven Gerrard, who I am a big fan of, over the years, even he has, faded. And they just aren't. Yes, if they'd have been set up amazingly well, occasionally they've had some decent performances. They go on a little run to hopefully lift them up the table. But I'll be honest, it's a cliche, but I think Man United weren't really getting out of second or third gear. And if Liverpool had scored against them, I think Man United had a good few more gears to go through, shall we say. My money would always have been on them.
I must admit, this has been one of those games where I am just honestly, I've rarely bet against Spurs, but I am tempted just to put a fiver again on Man United, because it's one of those games that honestly you'll be if the score's still level and it's at the 96th minute, you'll be like looking at that. You can imagine Alex Ferguson saying, I don't know who I think Chris Floyd, referee again, going, the referee didn't give us enough time to win the game. He'd be like pointing at his watch, won't he?
He always does, and it is amazing. I mean, he's earned a huge amount of respect for what he's won, but the preferential treatment he seems to be getting, I think, the classic little spat between him and the likes of Pardew, not so long ago demonstrates it. But I wouldn't hold it against you. I think if you bet against Spurs, it's not like wanting Spurs to lose. It's you're covering both bases. If Spurs win, you're going to be very happy to choose. If Spurs lose, hey, won a little bit of money. So soften the blow. So
soften the blow. No worries. In terms of, I was going to say, I don't know if you saw. I was watching ESPN yesterday, and I saw Lewis Holtby play for Schalke. I don't know if you saw the game or not.
I haven't, but I've heard it's a very good game. Scored a goal with a couple of assists. So get him in.
Yeah, I think when I saw the game, and here's the thing, I thought he was a good player. I thought him and the other player Jefferson. I think he played against Jefferson Farfan. I think he's played against us when he played for PSV a few times. I thought those two were the best two players on the pitch, without doubt. But the thing I noticed about him, do you remember how Joe Cole, when you'd see him play, even for Chelsea, when he was playing at his best, he'd go missing for about half an hour or something, and then suddenly just pop out. That's the thing I noticed. He was, I don't know, maybe because Schalke weren't that good, because they were all over the place, but he did go missing for about 20 minutes. He wasn't really there. He was really struggling to get into the game. But when he got the ball, I mean, his vision and his awareness, to slip that past him. Some of the passing, I mean, just the eye for a pass that he had I mean, it was absolutely beautiful to watch. I mean, I think there's still some wrangling going on. I mean, even though we didn't get him on a free, I think it would only cost about £2 million or something to bring him in now. We're still apparently Levy or someone's apparently Schalke said we offered them an amount of money, but it wasn't enough.
That's what I saw today as well, and I've seen clips of Holtby, and I haven't seen enough about him, but certain people are talking about how he could be a version of Van der Vaart. Obviously Van der Vaart is a class player, so I'm saying he'd be a like for like. I'm hearing good things, and especially with the injury that we've now had to Sandro. Yes, they play in different positions and are different players, but if it is only 2 million or a little bit more, let's call it 2.5. Let's be generous, Mr. Levy. Let's get the man in now. I would rather get a player in now who could have influence on the rest of the season than save ourselves basically what is a small change in the greater scheme of things when it comes to transfers. If it means we can bring him in now, but I did see that they rejected the initial offer, but. I don't want us to kind of hang around. Let's just get the guy in now, even if it means paying a couple of £1 million or £2.5. Get the guy in if he is as good as I've been led to believe.
Well, I think there's always going to be a bit of. Cause obviously, they don't want. Obviously, I think for them as well. If they I don't know if they're publicly listed or not, but I think they have to. I mean, obviously, because we'd have to announce how much we pay for any players because we're no longer listed on the stock market. But I think they'd have to list how much they've sold him for. And I think from their perspective, I can understand them trying to get as much value as they can. So I can understand that from their perspective. And I can see kind of Levy also because he doesn't want to be seen to be held to ransom as well. So I can understand why there's a little bit of posturing. And I think a deal will be done. Again, like you, I prefer it to be sooner rather than later. But I just think it'll be one of those things. I think it'll happen the end of January. I'd like to be sooner, but it just won't happen.
I agree. I think there's a big difference between haggling and a difference between buying a player, potentially waiting a bit, and it making £5 million difference, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Ultimately, they're going to lose him on a free anyway at the end of the season. So they desperately need to sell him in this transfer window if they can, and if they can get some money, they will take it. I think if we're wrangling over effectively 500 grand here or £1 million here, in the greater scheme of things, for a player that's touted as potential future regular international for Germany, I honestly don't think this is the time that we need to play hardball. Play hardball when it suits and when it's right and when it's going to make a big difference. For the sake of 500 grand or whatever it is difference between what Levy's originally offered and what they want, just pay them, get the guy in. We're picking him up for peanuts anyway.
I know.
Apparently how good he is. So do it now. Don't wait till January the 31st because we will have missed a number of games without him by then.
Yeah, I mean, I think a deal will be done. I think the Sandro thing's obviously taken us by shock because I think when he got injured, I think ABB said he could be back next week or something. He didn't look that bad, but obviously, they've had the surgery. He's out for the rest of the season, so they've had to really rethink things because obviously, I think if Sandro had been fit, then I think there was talk about Livermore going out on loan and Huddersfield probably being sold as well. And so I think they had to really rethink things. So I'm kind of glad in a way they're not rushing to any decisions. And because let's say we decided to sign him even today. Let's say we looked to sign him yesterday and say he was registered today. He could have signed for us. He wouldn't have had any time to train with us. So realistically, he wouldn't be able to really hit the ground running, kind of thing, So I think
stick him on. If he'd have been signed in time for Man United, hypothetically, I'd stick him on the bench just as an option. If we're a goal down or a couple of goals down with 20 minutes to go, we got nothing to lose, and it wouldn't be such a risk chucking him on. In that Van der Vaart role that I hear he can kind of play, and see if he can create something to make a difference. So. He wouldn't have perhaps been any great influence against Man United, but if he is as good as they say, bring him in now and let's not waste games when we could have had players playing for us, basically.
I think we probably will. I think if we do bring him in, I think it will be for the FA Cup tie against Leeds. I think that's when, if we do bring him in, I think it will be for them. I just think, I agree. I think it would have been better that we brought him in sooner, but it's just one of those things really that it hasn't happened. Let's move on with it. But I think, because I saw him and there was some of the ability he showed. I mean, I didn't see the best of him. I think it was a bizarre game. And these, do you know how we tend to, when we go 2-0 up or something, we tend to switch off? I don't know if you've ever seen us do that. Schalke.
Seen us do it 1-0, 2-0, 3.
Yeah, I think Schalke did the exact same thing because they go 2-0 up and then suddenly they're all over the place. And then it goes from 2-0 to 2-all, 3-2 to 3-all, then it's 4-3, and then Holtby does score in the last minute, then he's substituted off. But
it sounds like Spurs, that kind of game, so maybe it fits perfectly.
I think he will. I think he's definitely got talent. I still think, in terms of obviously we've been linked to Willian. I was going to ask you, what do you think about that? Because
I would love to get him in. I think he looks like a fantastic player. He's perhaps a Lennon with more goals in him and with more creativity. I'm a big fan of Lennon, but the guy can play as an inside forward. He's pacey, he's skillful. I would be a big fan of bringing in Willian. I really would be.
Here's my thing, and here's the thing that kind of I saw him play against Chelsea, and I thought he was an excellent player. One of the things that made me a little bit worried though was apparently he's gone not AWOL or something, but he basically hasn't returned back to his team in Shakhtar Donetsk. He hasn't gone back to training camp with them, and forget the duty he owes to his club. I think to his teammates that's very disrespectful to his teammates, because he's basically saying, do you know what? Because I think you have an obligation, not to your club yet, I think you have an obligation on your contract, but you also have an obligation to your teammates as well, because if they come back from wherever they come from, wherever in the world, that's the least you could do. I think as a sign of respect to your teammates, I think. And that's why I'm quite worried about him. It's just the fact, because if he does that to them, what's stopping him doing that to us in, say, 2-3 years' time? That's my only fear.
Very, very true. But I'll be perfectly honest, as a Spurs fan, I'm less concerned with him doing that to try and force him to move from Shakhtar. It's always the way. If he does it to someone else, I don't really care. If he does it to us, we'll go, oh, he's the worst person in the world.
Yeah.
Hang in the nearest tree. But I'm less fussed about him doing that. I'd say bring him in. I don't really care that much about his loyalty to his ex-teammates. If he comes in as a divisive influence, yes, that would be an issue. But if he comes in, puts his head down and plays, I will forgive him his little indiscretion.
Speaking of divisive influences, we've been linked with Levy'd. I can't pronounce his name. A French lad.
Yeah.
The French, we say the French Balotelli maybe, for the amount of headlines he gets. But they haven't said it. There are quite a few French Balotellis with Nasri, Ribéry. There's quite a few French Balotellis, aren't there?
It looks like we're potentially going to be looking to snatch Miller out off of QPR. Old Harry is doing his typical transfer window wheeler dealering at QPR.
What, excuse me, I'm not a weird dealer, I'm a fucking football manager.
Exactly. The poor lad's had that bad reputation following around, but it looks like we're going to get him. I think we really want him. I think his agent said that Spurs have made an official bid, and let's be honest, no disrespect to QPR, but if he has a choice of two, I'd like to think that we would be favourites to get him. How good he is, and whether or not he'll fit in with us, I'll be honest, I'm undecided.
Here's the thing that worries me a little bit, because maybe he's one of those players that, do you know what? I think there are some players they've had a bit of baggage, but they move clubs and then suddenly it's all pretty rosy for them.
Yeah.
One of the things that worries me about him is the fact that, do you remember when Jermaine Jenas left Newcastle because he thought it was a goldfish bowl there in Newcastle, and then he came to London? I'm like,
mainly because he then came and played for us.
Yes. I just remember, basically, if Levy'd, our tabloids being what they are,
Yeah.
especially the fact that, obviously, especially being in London as well, there's all that temptation around him, to do, because when you talk about, when you look at Balotelli and the problems he gives Mancini, and the divisive effect he has, because imagine all the effort that Mancini has to take in managing him, If I was one of Man City players, I'd be well pissed off. Thinking, wait a minute, why is this guy taking up all our time? And that's the thing about Levy'd. I'm a bit worried about potentially what he brings a little bit. That's the thing that worries me a little bit. Is he going to be divisive? Is he going to be disciplined?
I wouldn't be that concerned. I don't think you could really lump any other player Premiership in with Balotelli. Balotelli is more unto himself, that man. You know, he's an absolute lunatic, which is why the British press love him and why they keep writing the stories. But I think, you know, that would be the least of my concerns. I think we've got a very bright, very ambitious, very articulate manager and indeed chairman and club. We have someone that comes in. I actually think we as a club actually do pretty well with any divisive influences. We're not, you know, like a team where we have loads of people. I know there are famous examples of, you know, like one of our recent heroes, Levy'd King, always being just stumbling out of nightclubs, not just a little bit hammered, but absolutely legless. And you know, people are going to be coming to London. Any young footballer in the Premiership is getting paid way above, you know, their childhood friends, more than likely getting paid. They're getting huge amounts of cash flashed away. If they come to London, you know, any big city, the bright lights of the city, of course there are going to be, you know, distractions and potential bad influences, but it's part of growing up. If anyone does step out of line, I'd like to think the likes of AVD and whoever would, you know, stamp it out pretty quickly.
Because I think Arsenal were looking to sign Matt Villa, but I think after his problems in the Euros, they basically said that's it. We're pulling back, and it's, for me, I think football clubs are such delicate. Yeah, I mean, like, obviously, and again, I'm not gonna, because I've been one of those guys that I'm not bringing this up about the old Harry and the England thing, because that's been going on in the Spurs forum boards for God knows how long, and I'm not going to be one to bring it up. But I will mention something that Garth Crooks did once mention on a Spurs show one time. He goes, you know what? The dressing rooms are very, very delicate ecosystems. They're very, very fragile, and it doesn't take too much for the whole house of cards just to fall apart, you know. And that's the thing I worry about whenever we bring any of these players in. I think we've seen it go wrong so many times for us, you know. Well, you know, I think the season where we came fifth, and last season, obviously, where we spectacularly, you know, had that terrible, because was it February or something, we just could not buy a result, you know. And that's the thing that makes me a little bit worried. I don't know. Do you see what I'm saying?
I'm going to be honest. I think, you know, our team, the players we've got now, they seem like everyone gets on with each other. It seems like there's a good team spirit. People talk. If you look at any kind of, you know, clips of playing together outside of the actual game, they get on well. I honestly would worry not that much about one player coming in and having that much of an influence to be divisive or whatever, that it would actually adversely affect our season. I think a lot of people worry far too much about that kind of thing. And if you have a look at the number of football players over the years that have been, you know, in the press for some kind of indiscretion, they are numerous. Not just Balotelli, although he's the latest and perhaps the worst. There's been loads of them. Remember the Spice Boys at Liverpool? I remember, you know, reading about Sir Alex Ferguson having to go around various nightclubs in Manchester and drag out the likes of Lee Stock and Ryan Giggs by their ears. It's been going on for years. It doesn't mean that it has to lead to a drop down the table. So my bottom line is I couldn't really care less. I think if someone comes in and he causes a bit of trouble, he's disciplined and dealt with, you know, it's a professional game these days. If someone comes in and does cause that, he'll be out soon enough.
Well, I think the price that we could buy him for, I think he's been touted about the 8-10 million mark, and which isn't expensive, especially for a club like us. I don't think it is a lot of money. £10 million is a lot of money, but in terms of the big picture, I don't think it's a huge amount compared to the prices.
Yeah.
And I think the quality he has, he's a physically strong guy. He's got a good passing range, and I think there's someone who would actually bring some quality to us. And I think if he's someone that, I honestly do think that if, say, when he meets Villas-Boas and he sees like the facility, I mean, we spent on us how much at this, you know, incredible, you know, what's it, the Bulls Cross, Hotspur Way, this incredible training centre we've built, and I like to think we're building something really special. I think I know Spurs fans are legendary for saying this year or next year for sure, but there's something about this. I don't know. There's something special about what we're doing right now. I don't know. What are you feeling, Dom?
I completely agree. I see what AV is trying to do. I think we have a great bunch of players. Genuinely, you look at some of our positions, these youngish players that can remain our club for years to come. Lawrence Ingo, Tongan, Sandro, these are all young players. Pretty damn good. Dembele, etc., etc. I would obviously usually include Gareth Bale, but I think it's more than likely that at some point, some outlandish world record, he may go to a Barcelona or Real Madrid. But I think they are potentially on the verge of something special. What I want to see is Levy push the boat out, really put the mic where his mouth is. Because if we don't finish in top 4, then it could lead to everything breaking up. We're potentially on the verge of great things. We need to cement that and actually do it.
And this is the thing. I think with the recent problems that Spain are having with like their economy and everything else, and I think with the fact that we've got, I think this £3 billion deal over, I don't know, I think in the next 3 years, it's the biggest ever football deal ever or something. I think Gareth Bale, because I remember reading that story about when he had that incredible game against Inter Milan, and and Levy, I think Harry said, "Why don't you go to Dubai for take a few days off, just go away, just go to Dubai," and he went home to Cardiff to spend time with his family. I think he's a very, very down to earth player. He's very much very low key. I think I can actually see like players like him and Sandro. I think as long as we stay in the Champions League and as long as we challenge for the title, and I think we don't make it. We don't end up in Arsenal territory where we play wonderful. You don't think, we can actually challenge. I think we can really. I think given a year or something, get a couple of definitely get a centre forward in, a couple of centre forwards. We obviously sorted out we've kind of filled the hole that Rafa's left. Hopefully sooner than later, and if we can just get that defensive, that deep line playmaker, the unicorn role, the lock picker, whatever you want to call it. Let's just say the other favourites, the double pivot.
Unicorn's a good one.
But I just think I don't know what it is about, because here's one of the things. I remember when Gareth Bale was diving, because I remember this game against Aston Villa, he blatantly dived. Not the game, I think the home game, he blatantly dived, and we're all going on Twitter, Gareth Bale, stop diving. That's not who you are. That's not what we're about as a club. And I think there's something about Spurs. We don't, unless we can win. We like to win honestly. I think we've got some really good values. We don't want to buy success. We don't want to cheat to get success. We want to earn it. And I think there's something good about us. And I'm saying this almost like the Church of Tottenham, but there's something, I don't know. I think it's something that separates us from, say, the Man Cities and the Chelseas. They haven't, they kind of bought their success. We're trying to build something here, and I think. I don't know what you're feeling on this.
We're a club, from top to bottom, with vast, huge amounts of integrity. I couldn't agree with you more. And that's what sets us aside, not just from clubs that are spent big, but from the Arsenals of the world and others. We have a tradition, we have a set of values. It always has been that way over the years, and we do like to pride ourselves on, willfully defending anything that happens. That's why we mock Arsene Wenger, for example, who always over the years you say, we didn't see it. If, for example, we as Spurs fans see something, like you mentioned one example of Bale's diving, just for the record, I don't think he's a diver overall, but we as Spurs fans like to hold our hands up and say, look, you were wrong there, our player cheated, or he did do this. That does set us aside from some of the other clubs out there, I agree.
And in terms of we obviously assuming, let's say we do get a defensive midfielder in, because to cover for the loss of Sandro and kind of make up the loss of, because to bring that deep, to bring that kind of passing in the middle, because there was one player, I don't know if you saw him his name was it Fernandinho? I saw him play for Shakhtar, and I thought he was the man of the match for me. Whenever he was playing, his passing, his shooting was just off the charts. I mean, he was really bossing the game against the Chavs. And I was hoping we'd either bring him in really as a priority, or rather than say a Willian or even say MV. What would you think? Sorry on that.
I don't know enough or seen enough about him to comment on that. Willian, I have seen a fair amount, and I'll bring him in. In my mind, what I would love to see in an ideal world, I still would love to see he get the man that he really wanted when he came in, Moutinho. I'd love to see us get Leandro from International now. And, not saying we'd all get it at once, see that would be realistic, but those are the type of players that I think we should hold out for. I would rather buy one player, 15 to 20 million pounds, who is absolutely outstanding, than buy 3 players for 7 million pounds, for example. Yeah. So I would really base, I haven't seen the Fernandinho enough to comment. What I don't want, we've done in years gone by, which is stopgaps. People that they're okay players and they fit into a mid-table Premiership side week in, week out. I want to see us, even if it's one player, go. That one player make a big difference to the way that we play.
So you don't see Dempsey as a striker then? So you don't see Dempsey as a striker, as a top 4 club striker then? The way Mr. Villas-Boas does then?
Sorry, say that again?
You don't see Clint Dempsey as being a top 4 striker the way AVB does then? I take it.
Unfortunately, I wouldn't put Clint Dempsey in that category. No.
No, do you know what? I think Clint Dempsey. I wouldn't want to call him a utility player, but he's someone that I think Tottenham is as good as he's ever going to get. And
I agree, and he does the job for us. I don't want rid of Clint Dempsey. He's a great squad player to have around us.
Yeah.
But he's not the kind of player that will change the game. He's not that kind of... Robin Van Persie would obviously never come to us for a player of that ilk. What we need to go for is the younger type players who Man United and Man City and Real Madrid aren't yet going to put a bid for a record amount. We need to get those players when they are a little bit younger. The potential, honestly, be game changers and potential world beaters. Not big stopgaps on things.
Speaking of younger players, I don't know if you saw the rumour about Alex Pritchard. He may be leaving because his contract is coming up to expiry, and who knows? Maybe we might get Levy'd. He ends up going to somewhere in Belgium or Holland, and we might end up getting Levy'd.
Well, if Levy got Levy for Pritchard, again, I've seen some clips of him. I've heard amazingly good things. I would be less concerned about getting Levy about one of our prospects, but obviously I didn't want it to happen, than us snatching already first team proven players from other clubs. But we seem to have an amazing youth players coming through.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think the only player, obviously Corker's come through, and obviously you know how much I rate Tom Carroll, but I think there's something. I think the measure of how good any team is really is how many from the academy, because I think it's going to be some ridiculously low number, like 1 in 1,000 really, of any kids are going to make it to become a Premier League footballer. 1 in 1,000, 1 in 20,000 or something, some very, very low amount, because kids do get cut, and as they get close towards the age, kids will, very few kids will go on to make it. But when I look at, if you look at United with Cleverley and Evans, they are bringing through talented players, and Welbeck as well. That's 3. That's actually on their first team, Well, definitely, maybe not on their first team, but definitely Cleverley definitely is, and Welbeck and Evans will probably be on the subs bench. I think Evans is injured, but Welbeck will probably be on the subs bench. And I don't think we're producing enough real players. You're thinking, well, do you know what? Another Premier League side in the top 6 would want them, kind of thing.
It is tough. I think it's improved recently. I've seen a player that we've thinking next gen series, whatever it is. A younger player spanked not so long ago. It is tough, and like you say, a very small percentage will actually make it. However, it seems like quality of youngsters seems to have improved in the last 5-6 years, and I think we're in a position where there's a greater chance for some of them to actually break through to the first team than there was, 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
So, because here's my thought. Obviously, with Sandro being out for the rest of the season, there's another 16 Premier League games plus the FA Cup ties. Would you just say just leave Parker for the Premier League, don't even risk him, and say, unless it's an FA Cup tie against another Premier League side, would you say do not risk him at all in the Europa, or Dembele in the Europa either?
It's difficult. I think I would love us to pick up a bit of silverware, so I don't want us to put out massively weakened sides in the FA Cup, for example. But we have to protect. In the absence of Sandro's a big one. We have to remember that Parker has only just really come back. A pretty long-term and fairly serious injury himself. So we do need to wrap him up a little bit, and I'd like to see ABB, and I'm sure he will, use the squad a little bit and occasionally give players a rest and just use the players at his disposal wisely. But yeah, I think Parker's going to be essential for us the second half of the season now, or the run into the end. But
yeah. Because the other thing that annoys me, you'll hear all the talk about, Man United are missing this player for injury and this player. We've lost Kabul and Benny for injury for most of the season. I mean, for more than half the season we've lost them for injury. And we've now lost Sandro for the business end of the season. It's, and these are like major players for us. And you never hear them talking about that. Whenever it's like, that player's injured, some minor player, Johnny Evans is a good player, but he is a minor player, for United in the scheme of things. I think what Villas-Boas has done with the players he's had available to him through fitness, I think has been amazing.
It's incredible, but come on, Tube. Unfortunately, that is the way of the world. The teams that have had the great success, like Man United, are obviously going to be focused on and a hell of a lot more impressed than us. What I like about ABB is that he hasn't actually moaned about it. He's got on and done the job. If you look at it, like you say, we've had our best centre-back in Kabul out for the whole season already, from game one. We've had our established regular left-back Benny out pretty much for a similar period. And on top of that, we've probably lost two of our very best players, if you put Bale aside, in Van der Vaart, in between last season and this season, and yet we're still currently in the top four. Yeah. It's amazing what he's done so far. So we've lost two of our best players. We've got two of the great players that are out for injury. We're still up there.
Well, let's hope we don't do a Southampton and decide to get rid of him, because I must
say
that
is absolutely shameful, by the way. Shameful.
Lunacy, isn't it? It's absolutely lunacy. What more can the guy do?
They've made their bed, now they can lie in it. I don't think it'll be alone in saying it. That is a shameful decision Southampton did. And if they do struggle and go down, then they get sympathy from a lot of people.
Well, the thing is, I know the guy did speak for an interpreter yesterday, so maybe he's not confident enough to speak publicly in English, which, maybe he speaks a fair bit of English, but he's been looking at Southampton for the last couple of weeks. He's been learning about them. But the thing is, it's he's brought them up, back-to-back promotions, and
exactly.
It's what more can he do? I mean, it's not as if he can spend tons of money, and it's not as if he can. Even if he could spend tons of money, would they come to Southampton?
The situation is ridiculous. Two back-to-back promotions, and even if they finish bottom of the Premiership this season, they should have stuck by that man. It's ridiculous. Basically, you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. If they hadn't have got that second promotion, it'd still be in a job. Ridiculous.
Yeah. It kind of makes me. You know what? As people may, I've done it as well. I've been frustrated with Daniel Levy for some things he does, but this is something, for the way he runs our club. I mean, this kind of stewardship.
Levy gets a very bad and very unfair press. Yes,
from Spurs fans as well. That's the worst thing. It's from Spurs fans. It's not from the regular. It's actually from Spurs fans.
I agree. And Spurs fans have memories. We're in a much sounder position before Levy came aboard. Yes, it is frustrating. We've been spoiled in recent years. Levy has made mistakes. I hope he can learn from his mistakes. But I always say, it always amuses me how fickle Spurs fans can be. Much like every other football fan, but Spurs fans almost in particular. We go 1 week from everyone laughing and joking and going, it's amazing when we see you've been Levy, and then literally the next day be our enemy. It's classic.
Oh god! But I must admit, you convinced me about Jan and Villa. I mean, I was a bit, because I always get a bit worried. I think what it was. I've been paying too much attention to Mark Lawrenson and his idea of one bad apple can spoil the whole cart. But I think if you manage it correctly, you will have difficult players at every single club. And Adebayor was considered to be a difficult player. Gallas was considered to be a difficult player. And I think
all of these. That's exactly my. Sorry to interrupt, but yeah, that's exactly it. People make far too much about these kind of situations. Imagine any work environment. You know, I've worked for companies where occasionally you get people that come in that can be a bit disruptive. It's exactly down to what you just said, how they are managed and how that situation is dealt with. And in a grown-up professional environment like Premiership football, it should not be an issue anymore.
Definitely. Well, Dom, I really want to thank you for giving up your time. I so much appreciate this. This will be up on YouTube hopefully very, very soon. And if you can't watch this whole thing on YouTube, there's a company called DVD Video Soft. They've got this thing called free YouTube's MP3 downloader. So you can hear Dom's dulcet tones, velvety, silky smooth tones. So, you know, Barry White would like to sound like Dom, honestly. And yeah.
I've never had a finer compliment, Stu.
Thank you very much. And so let's say thank you for Dom for doing this. Hope I'm my heart honestly for tomorrow's game. I am obviously I'd like us to win, but my heart says a draw. My head says 2-1 to United. What do you think, Dom?
I'm going for a 2-2 draw. I think yeah, we've lost Sandro, but let's be positive. We've beaten them away from home already. A 2-2 draw, I'll be happy, and who knows, we might even get very lucky and sneak all 3 points. You never know. Yeah. That's what my heart says.
And do you know what? Anything that pisses off that Sir Alex Ferguson saying, "Oh my God, there was another 20 minutes left on the clock." Anything that happens, do you know what? My ideal thing would be at the end of the game, if we do win, is for us to go, "You got Levy," just to say that to him, or "You got forward, just that's just to really wind him up, because I have a lot of respect for Alex Ferguson. What he's achieved is incredible, but if things don't go his way, he's so childish about that.
He's a petulant child when things don't go his way. For a man of his age, don't get me wrong, he is a great character, of the Premiership era. He's been incredible, but it doesn't take much to get the man wound than these days.
Well, let's say so. Mr. Villas-Boas no longer does it. You remember the crouch he used to do when he was at Chelsea, when he'd be going, crouching down and hugging the touchline. Remember that? The old.
Yeah.
So he's thankfully stopped doing that, and I think he's grown up. He's learned his lessons. I think Alex Ferguson is a guy that will never learn his lessons. He'll still keep making the same mistakes. Anyway, thanks to Dom. I appreciate it.
Old dogs new tricks, I think, is the phrase.
Definitely. Thank you, Dom, and I really appreciate this. If like Dom, you'd like to be on YouTubes, I don't know why you'd like to be. Everyone seems to hate it, but Dom, and I think there's a few. The way I look at it, honestly, I say this now. I've got about, say, 10-15 people that like it. So if 100 people hate it, but 10-15 people like it, and more importantly, I continue like doing it, then I'll keep on doing it. So I thank Dom for giving me his time, for giving me the support for the YouTubes. Again, free DVD Video Soft. Just Google them up. They got this free YouTube MP3 downloader. Just download them. Listen to our dulcet tones. Put them as your book at bedtime instead of anything Radio 4 have to offer. And on that bombshell, I'd like to say goodbye and thank you to Dom. And as always, come on you Spurs.
Come on you Spurs.